Welcome back to the Nullified Take channel, where we've got the TNT takes for you on Australian Survivor, Heroes versus Villains, Week 1, Episodes 1 to 3, however you want to slice it. I am your host, Chris, and I'm very happy to be joined by Mucky tonight. We have not spoken for a whole week about Australian Survivor. I told Mucky, no talking about it before we jump on the podcast. Mucky, how difficult was it not to chat to me this week as you were watching all of the episodes?
I mean, it was... at first it was quite hard, but it became much easier. When you blocked my number, blocked my Instagram, blocked my Facebook, you just blocked me out of your life. You had a sign on your front door saying "No muckies allowed."
It's tough love, mate. I told you I'm the villain in this duo. You're the hero, or maybe you are actually the villain, since you do have Rogue as a part of your draft picks for this season. So it's up for debate. Hero. We'll let the audience decide.
Yeah. Exactly. Now, Rogue, the greatest anti-hero
of all time, who thinks she's the biggest hero of all time and keeps judging every single other hero and saying that they're not as big of a hero as she is, Mucky.
Exactly. We need Philip Shepherd, Debbie, Coach, and Rogue on the same tribe.
All right, well, we've got a very important question coming in here right off the bat. Mark is asking the question everybody wants to know. How does Mucky feel about Sneaky Steve after the first week? Is he still winning? And I tell you what, there is a special intro that we've got for every time Mucky is going to be talking about Sneaky Steve this season. We're going to be playing this intro. Hopefully it works. Let's have a look and see if we can get it to work. Because that would be golden. Go like that. And here we go. You in the audience, tell me if you can hear the Sneaky Steve intro before Mucky gives us his opinion about this.
Sneaky Steve, all time, every time. Sneaky Steve, where's Steve? Who's Steve? What Steve? It's Sneaky Steve.
Oh my gosh! Massive shout out to the Philippi family. They're the Voice Australia, honestly.
So that was Sneaky Steve's intro. Every time we talk about Sneaky Steve this year on this podcast, that intro will be playing. So Mucky, let us know, what is your thoughts about Sneaky Steve and his performance throughout this first week?
I loved his performance. I was kind of expecting he'll kind of get lost in the edit, with all these other massive players. But he had a really good chunk amount of content throughout the first week. And yeah, he was targeted, but he was never in serious consideration of getting voted out, in my opinion, until the final episode. And I think his like sort of intro he had, like the emotional backstory, is actually the most saddest backstory anyone's actually ever had on Australian Survivor. Like he really talks how sad he was to leave Survivor the first time, and then it's all Shawnee's fault.
We'll get into that. I feel like Sneaky Steve, if he doesn't have you as his manager, his promoter, his social media marketing manager, or whatever, he needs to reach out to you, Mucky, because you are Sneaky Steve's biggest fan, and I think you're looking away from a few potential obvious glaring flaws in his game this early on, but I have enjoyed seeing him back in our screens. At least I think he does bring something from an entertainment value, which is why I know you picked him so high and why you wanted to see him return to the game. But I want to get into a little bit of the first episode, the second and the third episode. The way we're going to run it this year, for people that have been following this podcast for a while, it's going to be very free-flowing. We're just going to talk about the highlights of each episode. We take it that everybody that jumps in here has seen it, so we're not going to reiterate every single bit of thing that happened, but we'll talk about the things that we thought sort of stood out to us. And then obviously in the live, because you are all a part of the show, please let us know if there's anything specifically you would want us to talk about. But Mucky, we get into the first episode, everybody gets reintroduced to us here as heroes and villains in the game. And very early on, Simon shows us he's here to play this season, and he's going to live into that villain's tribe sort of, way of doing things by sabotaging the heroes tribe twice, stealing once from Sam and the food, and then also trying to hold Sean back from finishing that challenge. Do you think that Simon, is maybe living or playing into this villainous side a little bit too much this year?
I mean, I think it's perfect, like it's great TV. Simon obviously knows how to make great TV. And I think, if you're a villain, you've really got to play into that, like I think it was so funny he was stealing from the heroes. Obviously, the villains tribe, massive mess. We'll obviously dive deep into how much of a mess they're obviously out throughout this week. But I think Simon, he's one of the few people actually trying to hold the team together by only through his agenda, though, not really through anyone else's. So, yeah. I think he's definitely stepping into that villain role, but he's also stepping into the hero role that the tribe really needs as well. But yeah. But
now, do you think Simon can, or they can afford at this stage in the game? They've now, I mean, it's going to be hard not to talk about all 3 episodes. Like I said, we'll do it free flowing. Yeah. They've lost all 3 immunity challenges to date. Can this tribe afford to lose Simon right now? Do you think that if they voted him out, that they are going to see tribal council after tribal council before the end? Or do you think that, he's playing with fire? Maybe he's overestimating his value to the tribe a little bit by trying to push that agenda that he has currently?
Simon's in a really interesting position. This is exactly what happened in Brains versus Brawn as well, through his actions as well. They really need him to win challenges, but he's like almost forcing them to vote him off, because he's just going against the majority every time, which is definitely great TV, but it just makes his position on the tribe go lower and lower. And I definitely think with players like Shawnee, like George, who don't really care about challenges, I can definitely see a scenario where it's like, you know what, we're not even winning with Simon, so what's the point in keeping him? And I think that's probably going to be like the big question next week. I think that's going to be like the big storyline. Do we actually need Simon? Because we're just going to lose regardless. So
it's interesting because I looked at the 2 tribes when they started the season, and I thought to myself, who put these 2 tribes together? They're like the most unbalanced tribes. You've got, the likes of Sean, you've got Sam, you've got Dave, and who's the person I'm meeting? Matt. All of them pretty strong guys in that tribe. And then you look at the villains tribe, and you've got Simon and Geordie who are decent. But then, when it comes to George and when it comes to Fraser, they're not the most physical guys, to the point where they actually sat both those 2 guys out of the immunity challenge at the end, where they had to do the monkey bars, and they had the woman carry the ladder because the woman was seen as stronger. So they had Liz and Sarah actually doing some of that physical parts in the show. So they seem very unbalanced. But let me go into the live here. There's a few comments that have come in since we've started. Kuna saying amazing strategy from Rogue. I know Kuna.
Yeah.
Sandy says hello to everyone. Hey, Sandy.
Hey, Sandy.
Jenny, welcome back as well. Editing improved, not perfect, but I feel like I know everyone apart from David. I felt like there were certain points where we at least got to see from people, but to me, it still seems very lopsided at this. They're trying, right, Mucky? They're trying to do better, but, we're kind of giving them a pat on the back for a C-grade edit at this point in my mind, where if this was a US show or a Survivor South African show, we probably wouldn't let them slide with the edit we've seen so far, because we're still not really hearing from a lot of people. Like, one of those people that I would have loved to have seen more content from in this first couple of episodes would have been Nina, for instance. She's very popular coming back this season, and she's strategic, she's got thoughts in her head, but we don't get to hear her point. Like, does she think Haley should be dealt with immediately? Does she think Rogue, what was, in fact, let's just go that comment of Rogue in episode 1. Like, absolute freaking mic drop moment in my mind, right? Because she goes up to Nina. Like, she had some terrible comments, tone-deaf comments prior to that. But she goes up to Nina and she's like, hey, you don't need to tell me where in America you're from. Don't talk to me like I'm dumb. I know the area, blah, blah, blah. And then she's like, in fact, I'm probably even more African-American than you because I'm from Africa. And I looked at her bio. She's from Melbourne. She's not from Africa. Yes, maybe she's done some documentaries there. Me as the South African would not say that to an African-American. Like, it's the most bizarre gameplay we've ever seen. And in my mind, we should have seen something from Nina after that to say how she felt about it. I feel like the producers just kind of, and don't get me wrong, I'm good with Australian Survivor not becoming overly political, but you have to look at some of these things sometimes when it come up. And in this moment, I thought, what was Nina's thoughts? How did she feel about it? Probably we'll hear about it from the interviews after the season, but I really felt for her in that moment, and not even to give her a voice after that. I would have liked to have seen more from Nina.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it was like quite bad that we didn't hear from Nina on that perspective, or even that we didn't actually hear really anyone's sort of opinions on that, or a lot of things Rogue was doing, apart from Haley going, yeah, she's pissing some people off. But I think it would have been really good to actually hear from people, no, that's not okay, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Tom here says that Sneaky Steve and Simon, Geordie's bromance have been my two favorite parts of the season so far. Simon and Geordie, there's some, let's talk about that for a minute. There's some bromance going on there, Simon is sleeping on Geordie's chest, Geordie is feeling Simon's butt when it comes to the advantages. Like, they're getting very cozy with each other. And I agree, they're a very fun duo so far. And to see how that's going to develop. We'll probably talk about it a little bit later on in the podcast as well. Cornelius says Monkey has to praise Steve. He wasted his number one pick on him.
It's not a waste. It was it was a strategic calculation.
All right. So Leo is asking a question that I think a lot of people are going to want to know in the live tonight, and is asking, hello, Leo, welcome to the live, saying, will Simon's obsession with George be bad for him? And then Sandy afterwards says, Simon's obsession towards George will be his downfall, in my opinion, and also they wouldn't let him go in tribal phase as long as Sean, David, Sam is still there. Reminds me of Survivor China Tribe Division. Yeah, very lopsided. Let's talk a little bit about it, because a big part of this first week, the storyline has been dominated by this rivalry. I don't know if it's a one-sided rivalry or not, but this is the rivalry George didn't know he had coming into this season. But Simon has got a chip on his shoulders because George formed part of that tribal council that sent him home. He was there for 2 seconds. And because of the 2 seconds that he ended up on that tribal council, Simon now believes that George is to blame for it, or he was a part of it, and he didn't warn him. To me, George had no loyalty towards Simon. He was never in a tribe with him. He got swapped or had that reward to go and sit on the tribal council for that specific vote. But somehow there's hurt feelings here, and he wants to take him out. I do think it's a combination of hurt feelings, but also knowing that taking out George would be a massive, he could become the Kingslayer, like you said. So it's legacy building to take out the king in the game. What's your take on this Simon versus George rivalry? Do you think it's a one-sided rivalry? Do you think Simon will get one over George? Where do you sit on this?
I think it's definitely a one-sided rivalry. I think, George throughout this week has very subtly told the other tribe and other people, Simon's in control. Do not trust Simon, And I think, because different brands versus Braun, it was very much George against Mitch or George against Joey. But I think George has really calmed down this season and is really actually well integrated socially. And he's not making those big moves. He's not trying to be the other legend going against Simon. It's just Simon going against George, which looks really bad for Simon. I think it's more on, it's obviously great TV, but also everything he says about George is actually right. If George gets a foothold in the game, he's taking off. And so what Simon's saying is right, is how he's wanting to execute it is really rubbing people the wrong way. And I kind of saw that same as with Michael. We obviously, dive deep into Michael as well. What he was saying is true, but if you kind of see that everyone's not agreeing with you, you just need to stop. You don't need to keep going. But both Simon and Michael
haven't
really done that. They find it very difficult to just not stop.
Yeah.
So I think Simon's going to lose.
Now, for me, George has been a non-factor this season. I don't think he's as big of a threat yet as he was in his previous season, but we all know how dangerous he can be. If you give him enough time in the game, if he does build his numbers, if he does take strategic hold of the game, he's going to be very dangerous. But the only reason George is still in this game is because of Shawnee and how good she's playing this game right now. But George himself is not saving himself. I find it quite, I'm a big George fan, so don't get me wrong, but I find it funny to see George boast about being the king and say, Simon thinks he's running this tribe, but I'm running this tribe, when the edit clearly shows us he's not. He doesn't have the control. He doesn't have the social capital at the moment to do anything. So he's forced to sit back, but Shawnee does have that control, and he is within that alliance. He's sitting with Shawnee, which I think, for me personally, is very dangerous for George to do, because if he does sit next to Shawnee at the end of the game, Shawnee's winning this. Shawnee's got a way better social game than George has. So I can see him working with Shawnee while it's convenient, but at some point, he's going to have to, take her out if he wants to win this game. He cannot sit against another Haley at the end of the game, which Shawnee would be another blonde girl that he sits next to at the end that possibly could beat him again, similar to what Haley did in the previous season. But I do see little bits of improvement. In this first episode, he tries to get his people. He works with Angeli. He tries to work with Kara. He tries to build these very solid relationships so he can have an alliance. But then everything turns to custard from that point, because he ends up losing both of the two people he thought was going to be his Kara's this season, and they end
Yeah.
up going out, one of them due to an injury. And let's talk a little bit about that first. What do you think about these challenges on Australian Survivor? Like, I love physical challenges, but clearly something has to be done, because how many seasons in a row is it now of seeing people get evacuated due to injuring themselves in challenges?
Yeah, I think it's I mean, obviously, it really depends on the challenge. I think, because there has been like medical evacuation, like since Brands versus Braun, right? But I think all of them have been extremely different. With Chelsea and Georgia being taken out of the game, it was more on like their health with being in the outback, if that makes sense. With Nina, it wasn't like that the challenge broke or anything. It's just that her leg kind of snapped with how she was sliding down. But also in this case, it was quite dangerous. Obviously that the mud pit was quite shallow, not that deep. So obviously, it's like you have to really tuck and roll. Otherwise, if you fall on your face like George, it's just going straight. So yeah, I love physical challenges. I love to help brutal Australian survivors because it really shows like because I love the idea of survivors, that how far are you willing to push yourself, And I think the problem with American Survivor is every challenge is the same, like stand with a block on top of your head, or you've got to move the snake and do this puzzle. But I actually really love just the whole like smash through a bundle of sticks, like tackle each other for like a sandbag, So I do love those challenges. Yeah. But I do agree that the mud pit could have been a lot deeper, because that was definitely a massive health
For me, the problem isn't the physicality of the challenges. I love the physicality. I love that Australian Survivor 100% owns the right to call themselves the toughest survivor out there. It's the survivor that goes for the longest. It's the survivor that has the most toughest challenges out there. The one problem I do have is that I feel like it's not being safety tested properly before they go out there and get people to do this. Because how did they not take into account that not every single person is going to be at Sean or Haley's physicality going into that challenge? Not everybody is super athletes. You've got normal people doing this.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, for goodness sake, Jackie is 49 years old, and she's someone that is, she's not an athlete. She's sorry, maybe poker players are athletes in some ways. I don't want to, discredit her poker ability, but you know what I mean? She's not physically training and hitting the gym every single day. And I feel like it's such a sad way for someone like Jackie to go out. We didn't rate her very high coming into this season in regards to her legacy, but she's still someone that deserved a proper second chance, but she's out this way. I was a little bit flaky on George being gone. I thought maybe, they kept him away a little bit longer because he was in danger. There was a bit of doubt in my mind, but then when he came back in the next episode and I saw that, man, the guy really had it tough, that scar on his forehead and feeling like he nearly broke his neck, I did feel bad for him. He definitely used that a little bit to his advantage, because I do think that it lowered his threat level in some people's minds when he came back, a bit of a wounded bird, basically coming back into the tribe.
Yeah, and that's something I was going to bring up earlier. I think, while George, you may say he's not in control, it's been a bit of a non-factor, I think it's really changed the game this time, because the second he starts going, okay, we have to blindside this person, blindside that person, I think there's been people going to be like, oh, okay, so this really 100%. Is George's on TV. But I actually feel like, the trial counts where Michael went out, Michael, called out George for his bad challenge thing, and everyone was supporting George.
Mucky, why are you so mad about my observation of George? Why are you so mad?
I'm not mad.
You're red. You're red in the face, Mucky. You're red in the face.
I'm pink in the shirt too. Gosh, that's like but it's like everyone's going like supporting George, and even that scene where Simon and George were laughing at him, like, why is he? He's like pretending to struggle. Just down by the rocks, but he's not paralyzed. He can, go swim out a bit deeper to watch his head off. But everyone's like, oh, George, you're okay, So I actually feel like while he's not calling the shots strategically, he's improved a lot socially to the point where people do trust him now. People aren't joining, Simon and George to take him out. People really want to work with them. And if someone calls him out, they're defending George. So, so while he's a non-factor strategically at the moment, he's definitely a big factor socially, and I think that's going to help him propel very deep into the season.
Leo, I see this comment. I promise you I'm coming back to it towards the end of the podcast, because we'll probably finish it off with that question towards the end. Want to read a few more lives here. Alan, welcome back to the live, says at least this rivalry between Simon and George makes sense. George got Simon out, unlike the one-sided Stevie Shonny thing. I do think that Shonny was a part of that vote against Steve as well, from memory. Like she was part of that, right? Yeah. So it's not completely. It's almost the same. Like I don't think George orchestrated the vote against Simon. That's my point. Like he got informed by Haley, this is how I need you to vote, and he just lend his vote. But he should have way more issues with Haley than what he does with George, in my mind.
Yeah, I think they originally wanted to take up Zach, but they needed him for his strength and the challenges. It's like, okay, well, you got Benji, Robbie, and Zach, and then Steve. Let's take out Steve, so you sort of weaken them, but like as an alliance, but you still keep the strength for the challenges. So, yeah.
100%. Gabe, completely agree with that live comment there as well, saying it's really Shonny and Liz running the Villains Tribe. Fully agree with that. Liz has been impressive. She's been the most impressive newbie for me so far this season.
Absolutely.
And yeah, we'll talk about her as we talk about the live first week. Marcus, he says Simon's point about taking out George in pre-merge, and if Simon makes it to the final tribal council, crows about it. The jury won't respect the move compared to if he did it at the merge. Yes or no to a degree. I think it depends on who is in the jury. I think if there are players there, a lot of veterans of the game, people who know what George is capable of, like Haley maybe sitting on the tribal council, I think she would give credit to Simon if he did take George out early. I think that taking out George and eliminating that threat in the game for Simon could be the right move, because George doesn't really protect Simon all that much, because Simon doesn't have the biggest reputation coming into this season. But for Shonny, 100% it makes sense that she's trying to protect him, because Shonny is the biggest legend coming into this game outside of Haley and George. So if Haley and George is not around, Shonny is going to get looked at next, even though I think she's doing an extremely good job socially at making some great connections with some of these newer players. The only problem is a lot of the new players are going one after the other. So there will be veterans left at some point who will know what Shonny is capable of. And that is when she will become a big threat for a lot of these returning players. So I think Shonny is doing a great job in regards to that, at least. Gabe also says the Villains Tribe pulled a one world up by voting out an additional person at the tribal council when they didn't need to. What was your thoughts on that? What was your thoughts on them not putting the pause on voting someone out and just saying, hey, Villains are going to do what Villains are going to be doing?
I think it was so done. I actually think this week has been the downfall of Simon, and I think we're really going to see it next week as well, because I felt like in the premiere Simon did have all the control, right? But then when the second episode happened, Shonny then flipped the tribe against Simon, and then now people are slowly turning away from Simon now. So I think there was a move I think Simon wanted to do, in terms of, we know that Angeli is aligned with George. So if we took out Angeli and George does come back, he's got no one. That's how I kind of saw it. But I think it was like the wrong thing to do, because if you think about it, they would then be down 3 players if George doesn't come back. They go to tribal another 2 times, so they're immediately down 7 against 12. Yeah. Which I think
they messed up the production team's plans as well. And hats off to production, because I almost thought production was going to say, we're not going to do a vote tonight because we just lost someone. And they would have been in the right to do that and send everybody back home because someone is out of the game in the Villains Tribe. But they actually followed through by saying, nah, you can save this person or you can vote them out, which I'll give credit to production for doing that. But I think that them holding back the information that George is okay and he'll be coming back, they were trying to force the tribe to make the decision of not voting someone out because of that uncertainty. And it kind of blew up in their face, because the Villains lived up to their reputation and they ended up voting someone out in any case. And I feel for Angeli, because I feel like Angeli could have been a very big character this season. I liked what I saw from her in those first couple of minutes in the show, and her just being like authentic. She kind of reminded me my name, the lady who got really far last season as well. Chrissy. She reminded me of Chrissy so much, because she was just raw and to the point. Like when JLP was asking her, how was last night? And she's like, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. It was horrible, sleeping out here in the dirt. And I love that authenticity that some people have, I think she would have been a great character this season. And just by, she inherited George's threat level, and they took her out because she was a number for George. That was really it.
Yeah, exactly. And just a comment about that George thing as well, because I mean, I'm not sure. Like, it kind of rolls me up when people like try to take shots at Survivor, like, oh, it's a rigged show. I do think there have been a couple times in Survivor history where it has been like, wow, that is awfully very convenient. Like when Noelle found the steal the vote when she was down 2-3, and the KJ finding that sent 3 people away from tribal council when she was in a 3-person minority. There have been a few cases where it was like that is a bit too convenient, but I feel like it's not that rigged. So I definitely think they may have told the the tribe that George might be coming back. But I think with a head injury, because it was like around there or something, I think if it like you would need quite a bit of time to assess can he actually go back out, because if that gets infected, that's straight to your brain. That's
a good point.
Yeah,
that's a really good point. Sandy here says as well, Angeli was robbed in that first spot. Yeah. But the next person that's going to get voted out was Michael. What did you think of Michael's gameplay? You spoke about it a little bit. He was all over the shop. He wanted George out in that first episode. That was his whole game plan. Going back into the game and seeing George come back, he was again trying to get onto that, but it didn't seem like he really did what you need to do as a survivor player. He's a fan. He's watched a lot of it. He sees the strategic part, but like a lot of fans, he kind of looked at people as chess pieces instead of really spending time getting to know them, building those social connections so that you can then use that social capital to make moves. He was just trying to dictate the vote and get people to just do his bidding. And it didn't look like he was putting a lot of effort into actually building bonds. Is that how you saw it?
Yeah, absolutely. I did find Geordie's confession about him to be quite funny, because he was so intense, he was basically a campground intense, so yeah, it's like just how he just stared at the camera, how he stared at other players. You see like his eyes were like, kind of twisting a bit.
Intense, yeah.
Definitely if I was there, I would have been a bit shaken just talking to him. But yeah, I feel like he wanted other players to make the move, but he never communicated that. Like I love that scene where he's talking to Simon, and Simon's like, so have you got the numbers to take out George? And it's like, have you got the numbers to take out George? And there's just that massive back and forth because clearly none of them have actually tried getting the numbers to take out George. So, yeah, here we go. Yeah.
Yeah, so Marcus just brings up the comment saying the scene between Simon and Michael was super awkward to watch when Simon was asking Michael for information. It didn't look like Michael was willing to share, which I think is really when Simon decided, listen, I can't use this guy's number. I can't work with him because he's not really bringing anything to the table. He's, it's kind of like when you're at work and, I don't know, you've probably a bit young, but I've been in management roles leading people for a very long time at work. And when you've got people, everybody brings you problems, right? Like if you're a manager, they're like, hey, this is my problem. I need fix. But very few people bring you solutions. But those people that bring you the solutions, they're your star performers. Because as a manager, which Simon is in this case, you're always going to have people coming to you with problems. You need solutions. So I feel like Michael he thought he was leading Simon for some other reason, and dictating Simon to come with him, but he didn't have anything enticing for Simon to bite into. Like, I mean, Simon really wanted to make that move, and he just, at the end of the day, I think if there was any legitimacy to the plan, Simon would have been on board immediately to do it. Gabe here says, Michael played too intense and too fast. There is always a player who does this. Michael just this one for the season. And again, Michael seems like a super nice guy. He's reached out to me on Instagram. I might get him on the podcast at some point to do an exit interview with him. He seems like a super nice guy. So this is nothing against Michael as a person. I would like to believe as a fan, if I go out there, I wouldn't be that intense. But you just don't know, when you're out there, how you're going to react to the pressure of playing the game, and especially going up against former players, which I'm sure they didn't expect to go up against someone like George. So that would just intensify the pressure that you're going to put. And also the other thing I also thought of with him is that it's been said many a times in the past that in Survivor, your strengths become your weaknesses and your weaknesses becomes your strength. So in this game, Michael's strength as a person outside of this game is that he is an independent journalist, which means he has to work triple as hard to get the scoop, to work on a story. So he has to be intense and he has to push that agenda. But sadly in Survivor, that strength that he has as a journalist and as an independent journalist worked as a weakness for him in the game and ended up sending him home because he was too intense. It might work in his day-to-day. It's not working on Survivor where you have to play it a little bit more low-key. Also here, a question coming in from Louis Hugh Jones. Louis, welcome to the live. Louis asks, does have less players actually hurt you in the challenges, Michael? What do you think?
Well, it really depends who the players that you don't have are. If it's Simon and Sean, then
what are you trying to say? Are you trying to say, like, George is half a player compared, or maybe like a quarter player compared to Sean, and then Fraser is the other quarter, so they're like half of Sean together.
I mean, probably Sean is 6'7". I'm 6'4". Sean is way taller than me. So, but yeah, it's like I mean, I guess it really depends on the challenge. I think if it's those really physical challenges like holding stuff up, I feel like Jackie could be quite good on that. Or definitely some of those like tackling type challenges. Michael might have been quite good at that. So it really does depend on the challenge, I think, because you're able to strategize a little more because you have those options. Like the heroes, they can be like, oh, okay, so. Jerry might be good at this one, but he's not going to be good at this one, so we can easily sit him out. Whereas if you have less numbers, you can't make the decision. You're forced to work with what you got. Yeah.
Now you're touching on the heroes there. We haven't almost spoken about the heroes at all for the last 30 minutes since we've spoken about this week, because I'd say probably 80 or 90% of the coverage this season or this week has all been about the villains, not the heroes, right?
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on the heroes as a tribe? What do you think of the dynamics that are starting to form there? And do you think that there is a realistic shot for anyone in the heroes tribe to still win this season? Or do you think that because of the edit being so low key on them, the chances are very slim that we get a winner from that heroes tribe?
Look, I think it's like a mixed case where they're trying to show stuff from the heroes, but all the juice is really coming from the villains, especially that third episode. There was just so much chaos going on. Like, I recall just remember, just checking how much longer the episode I got left, because I've been watching them like, 2 a.m. New Zealand time. And I was like, oh my gosh, you still got like 45 minutes until Tribal. Like what's going to happen,
And there's so much happening in that 45 minutes.
Yeah, there's so much happening, yeah. And whereas on the heroes, there's probably more just like, we've got to take out Rogue. Rogue is annoying people. Like, I have noticed that the repetition has really died down this season. I feel like, we're not getting that same of, I'm in control, I'm doing this, like over and over again. It's like someone says that once and then we move on,
Yeah, David apparently hasn't even had a confessional as of yet. I believe everybody else in that heroes tribe has had a confessional. Ron asks, should the heroes throw a challenge? I personally, and this is a good question, kind of goes hand in hand with the whole will Hayley be voted out next question from earlier, which we will get into a little bit later on. But let's look at this first. If you're out on Survivor, when is it okay to throw a challenge, Mucky? And is it ever okay to throw a challenge in Survivor? What's your take on that? Because I think it's one that has divided the fandom for many years.
Exactly. I think there's only 2 instances why you should ever throw a challenge. I think the Braun throwing a challenge match with Braun to take out Simon, there's definitely a must, because if he makes a merge with 2 idols, he's obviously like one of the strongest out there. He's going to go really deep that season, And I do think for the heroes, I feel like if you're throwing a challenge to vote off Rogue, then that's just such a waste. But I feel like if you're going to throw a challenge as the heroes, you have to take out Hayley. Because if she makes a swap, if she realigns herself with George, or like, players like Shonny, or like pretty much any of the villains, because Hayley's definitely the benchmark. Is she a hero or a villain? Because she's definitely like a lot of both. Then she's going to make it really deep into the season. So I think that the heroes maybe should to take out Hayley, because they'll just really unify the tribe. But at the same time, like, you may want to keep that tribe together until merge, because I think that's definitely what's going to happen. Like, there's definitely scenarios.
I feel like personally, unless you are fearful that there's a flip-flopper in your group, someone that if you end up swapping into another tribe, they're not going to be a number for you. In fact, they might even come for you. They're going to gun for you. I think you take somebody out in that instance, and it could be very beneficial to you. But in a lot of cases, I feel like people throw challenges a little bit too easily in Survivor when it's sometimes not needed. And we've seen it many a times in the past where one tribe dominates, they throw one challenge, and suddenly the momentum is against them because they've given the other tribe belief and hope that they can win some of these immunity challenges. So I would be very cautious of doing that. For me personally, it's too early to try and throw a challenge to get rid of Hayley at this stage. Hayley is someone that I think will always be a target. Like, when you get to the merge, she's probably a merge boot. She's early in the merge. She's going. You don't want her to get anywhere close to the final, because if she gets to the final as a winner, we've seen it before. We've seen it happen. No matter what, your game could be not the biggest game out there, but just by you getting to the final as a winner against non-winners, that gives you so much credit and possibly could give you the win at the end. So I do think that they need to deal with her at some point. But I don't think, coming back to that question from earlier from Leo, I don't think that they're actually going to follow through with voting Haley off. I do think that if they do throw a challenge, it's definitely to get Rogue out. I think that they've definitely hinted enough in the edit that Rogue is an outcast. There's enough people that are noticing it. And one of the things I do like about Haley in these early stages, again, we're seeing why she's such a great player, possibly the best winner we've had that have returned to the game. In any case, she just needs to survive one vote to become that player that has had the best record coming back into the game. She's built really solid relationships with people already in her tribe. It seems like Paige and Flick is willing to work with her, and she seems to be sort of, people are aware she's dangerous, but I feel like she is probably disarming them just enough to stay there for a couple of votes. And I feel optimistic that if she does get into a swap tribe with George, they'll work together, because we had that scene where George spoke to her and gave her information about the idol, which was really cool to see that George is going to look out for his friend Haley. They are friends in real life, so he's willing to work with her at this stage because he needs people. He's really out.
Yeah, exactly.
I think George is still in a hell of a lot of trouble. George is not in control of this game at all at this point.
No, definitely not. I think the idol's really going to help him. And I think if him and Haley have the idols on each tribe, that's really going to help them go quite fast, especially if they do make a tribe swap together. But I don't know. I feel like it's a waste of a vote taking out Rogue, because where's Rogue going to go to? She's going to go to the villains and be like, oh, I'm such a hero, you're such a nasty villain. They're probably going to get quite pissed off with Rogue too, It's like that. It's like the Debbie situation and Game Changers,
She's a one-upper. She's a one-upper. She's always got to one-up the other person. Like, oh, you think you're a hero? You flew out to save people from an island? Well, guess what? I do, conservation work and save rhinos in Africa, So she's always got to have like that thing that makes her more important and the center of the story, which for me as a person, like, I really get annoyed by that. Like when I meet people like that in real life, it would work on my nerves, because, that is like the least attractive personality in a person if they do that. And I don't know if she's aware. I don't know if she's aware she does that or not, but it's not been a good week for Rogue at all when it comes to that.
Yeah,
Gabe here says that the only time to throw challenges after a tribe swap, like Ethan did in Africa, so his side had the numbers at the merge. That is a good point, and I agree with that. To save your Lions members, definitely it could be a good thing to do. Tom here says the newbie heroes need to vote out a returnee from their tribe when they go to tribal council first. I choose Nina or Haley because they're the most strategic hero returnees. Now, here's the problem that you have, right, Tom? Because I agree with you. Like, the newbies should be doing that. The newbies are falling down like I predicted. Like, to me, so far, everything is going according to script. Right, I said the newbies are going to get absolutely outclassed by the returning players. It's happened so far, right? We've had 3 out of the 4 players go home that are newbies. I think Jackie would have still been in the game if she didn't get evacuated. They're looking out for each other to a certain degree. So yes, the newbies should do that. But what is bonding the newbies together? Have they hung out like some of these other players have done at Survivor events and socialized and strategized if they were ever to go back to a returnee season? No, they don't even know each other. There's no loyalty between those players. So I don't see the newbies sticking together and voting out a returning player, even though they should. If they're smart, they do that. I just think that the players that are coming back, they're ingratiating themselves really well. Haley's got Paige as a friend. I don't know where Nina's sitting. It's frustrating me because I want to know what Nina's thinking and where she is in the game. And I've seen Sean and Sam already make friends with the meat boys, right? The meaty boys. So they're all good.
Boys,
So I think they're doing a good job.
Speaking of which, what type of meat are you?
Jeez, I don't know, man. I'm like the least foodie person out there. So you'd have to tell me, mate. Like, what type of meat would I be?
I'm not sure because I've never. Because
I feel like I'm a classic. What's a classic? A rump steak or something? Like, just like a. You can rely on me.
Well, if we're talking about relying, I reckon you'd be like easy a mince and cheese pie or those small, cheesy sausages you can get at Pack and Save.
So I'm like Benjamin. I'm the mince.
Yeah.
I'm the mince.
Yeah, you're the mince. Yeah. No, but you're that mince and cheese pie. They find at the dairies where it could be bad, but since you have that thought process, it's always really good every time. You get what I mean? Yeah.
No. Pretend like I do. I'm not a foodie. I don't think in those terms, but it was really fun. One of the things that to me I want to bring up very quickly and briefly that was a bit shocking is that did you know that George was gay? I did not know that, and that was a bit of a shock to me when Shani said that. I felt like she may have outed him on TV when she said that, and I actually rewinded. I was like, when she said that, I was like, did I hear that right? And I rewinded, and she said, I don't want to lose my gay or the only gay still in the game. And I thought about it, and I was like, this is one of the reasons I kind of like Australian Survivor is because, you know, and again, it's up to the individual, but you know, if George is gay or not, obviously it doesn't matter. I still think he's an awesome player. It doesn't matter to me. But what's cool about Survivor is that George is there. He's just a player, and he's just doing a good game. He's not diving into identity politics or making that his story on Survivor. His story, he is the king. He is doing really well. So I think it's pretty cool. But I didn't know that, so I was quite surprised because I know that he went to the Middle East not that long ago for football, which I'm sure it's frowned upon over there.
Yeah,
was it Qatar or something like that?
Yeah, Qatar, yeah. No, yeah, I had no idea about that either. But it's also like, you know, we shouldn't judge people, or our perception should not be,
100%.
You're gay, you're bi, you're they or them, you know? Like, it should just be, you know, you're Chris. You know, like we shouldn't define people based on their
like Nina shouldn't be the African American on this season, and you know Benjamin shouldn't be the Asian guy or whatever. Like I don't like it when we define people like that, but I get it that for some people it is important that there's representation, and I don't want to minimize or take away from people who find that to be important. But yeah, it was just out of the blue. I didn't see it, so I don't know if anybody else knew that as well. But he's not made a big deal of it, and like I said, he's a great player, so it's awesome to see him back. Let's read a few more comments here. Kuna says, "I'd be a pig on a spit." That's a good one, Kuna. Fat Dad Slim, welcome to the live, says Matt had an awesome episode 1 when heroes get some focus in the edit. I think he'll be a threat. I agree. I liked his edit in the beginning. He seemed to be the newbie that got a little bit of airtime, which made me obviously happy because I'm pretty sure I had him in my team as one of the newbies where I was like, I like this guy. He's like the Aussie next door, you know, just the normal everyday guy who's a Survivor fan who gets to play the game. So you want to get behind him.
I've got a massive bold prediction for Matt as well. T-bone steak.
Tom saying he's a T-bone steak after the meat's been eaten.
My prediction of Matt is I think he's like the massive underdog this season. He's going to be like the Geordie of the season. Not really like, you know, I'm the joke or anything, but just the guy on the bottom who keeps winning out. I think that's my prediction of Matt. Yeah.
I could see this. I can definitely see that.
The Brit from Samoa, like that sort of type role, like the Michael Yerger, you know, not really like the biggest strategic player, but definitely like the really likable underdog hero who probably makes it quite deep, but then doesn't quite make it, if that makes sense.
Yep.
There's my massive bold prediction.
So Gabe here is saying, so speaking of newbies, are the ones left on villains, Fraser, Sarah, and Liz all doomed? Do any returning players voted out before them? I would say Fraser. I had high hopes for Fraser coming into the season. To me, he just seems to be a passive player and very, very soft-spoken, you know, lays back, does what the tribe wants. It's not going to cut it this season, sadly, for Fraser. I see Fraser as a pre-merge boot because he's not playing the game aggressively enough. I could be completely wrong, but that's how I see it play out. Sarah, I've mixed feelings about her because I feel like if she was a bigger player, we'd see more from her from an edit perspective, but it wouldn't be the first time that we see someone get deep in the game without an edit. It's happened many a times in the past, so it's not impossible. But I would say Fraser and Sarah I'm more fearful of. Liz, I think she is solid. I don't see Shani letting Liz go. I think Liz is that right-hand person to Shani this season, and I think the likes of Shani, Liz, and George are going to be running a big part of this game. I would be more fearful for people who don't fall within that trio. Simon and Geordie seems to think that they've also got this tight thing going with the girls, with Shani and Liz, but I know for a fact Shani is leaning more towards George out of those two groups, so they're kind of right in the middle, and I think because of that, Liz to me is pretty safe. I've been impressed with her. Plus, she's really good at challenges. Like she is a beast. That was
massive
impressive
beats,
to see her go up against both Haley and Nina with Shawnee as her partner in that challenge. And she won that basically, I think, on her own. Like, not taking much away from Shawnee, but we all know Shawnee, that's not a thing, right? So Liz went up against two beasts, took them out, and then she went back up there to take Nina out head on, which was a bit of a surprise to me because Nina's been good in challenges, but I would have thought Haley or somebody would have stepped up, or Flick, to go up against Liz head on. But they chose Nina, which was interesting. I've noticed that Haley is sitting back from a lot of things. She's not doing the puzzles. She's not making herself the center of attention. And I think she's doing that on purpose, not to continue to create even more of a target on her back where people are like, well, look at how good she is in these challenges. We can't have her at the merge.
Yeah, I've actually been watching some episodes with my father actually, and he's just a casual. He's not a super fan, he's just a casual. But the one thing he pointed out to me was, almost every returning player has changed their game except for Simon. Simon is still going hard early. He's still the alpha player that they need, but he's still trying to push so hard to get like another big player out that it's ruining his reputation. Whereas George and Haley, both of them are really strategic, but they're not like all about strategy at the moment. They're more focused on building the social bonds, and both of them are doing a great job at it. There's so many scenes of Haley really bonding with Flick, with Paige, with Ben.
Also, another player,
George,
that has been somewhat under-edited up until this point, that is returning this season. I had low hopes for them. They're in my team. Now I feel really good about it, but I chose them kind of late when it came to the returnees, is Geordie. Because when Geordie came back this season, I was fearful for Geordie that he's this player that wants to make big moves. He wants to be the biggest player. But he's playing a very low-key game. He's sitting behind Simon as a shield. Simon is sort of driving a lot of the conversations, but he seems to be the one that can float in between alliances very easily at this stage. And he's listening to Shawnee. He's listening to reason about not taking out George immediately. He's playing within himself. The Geordie that we knew from last season would have taken that shot against George every single day of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Geordie is always going to do quite well at the start of the season. He's really sociable. He's really likable. And something about Geordie that I want to talk to you about as well, because often, like in Australian Survivor as well, not everyone gets a confessional. Geordie hasn't had that many confessionals. I think he didn't have any confessionals.
But he's in a lot of conversations, right?
Yeah, but you see him talking to a lot of people, and that's something I know as well. Same thing with Fraser. He only had the one confessional at the very start, but we see him talking to Michael. We see him talking to Mimi. We see him talking to a lot of people, but we're just not hearing his perspective. So is that maybe the Australian way of trying to give everyone screen time, but also giving them like the sound bites that they need for like the big promos and stuff? What are your thoughts on that?
The only issue I see for Geordie, right? And Louis here asks, is Geordie playing a better game in the shadows? I think he is doing the right thing for what he should be doing at this stage, because you don't want people to remember you're that guy that no one can trust. You want people to have faith in you, that they can rely on you. But Louis is asking, trying to keep everyone happy, or is he at risk of getting left behind in the alliance front? Now, I don't think he's necessarily going to be left behind on the alliance front, but where I see a danger for him is that if Simon continues to push the issue, and if George gets to the point where he's like, I've had it. We need to take out these guys. They're coming for me. He could be guilty by association, and he could be taken out. We don't know what Simon has at this point, and there's a lot of speculation about that because he found this disc in the cookie jar that had absolutely no clue with it. So we don't know what it is. Is it a fake idol? Is it a fake advantage? Which I'm desperately hoping it's not, because I don't want production to be planting fake things in there. Is the clue potentially still at the bottom of the cookie jar and somebody else is going to pick it up, which is going to create more paranoia? What does he have? Because when he had that idol icon next to him at the bottom of the screen, it had a cross through it, basically meaning it's not an idol, or it's just confusing. It's the mystery of the week for me.
Yeah, they kept like really zooming up on the lid of the cookie jar. Is it maybe like the lid of the cookie jar that maybe fell in, or I do think it could be like an idol nullifier, because there's nothing on the other side, and definitely on the other side you could write down someone's name on it, so everything could be like a idol nullifier. But definitely there's a massive cookie jar, like I've got like buckets of cookies actually just down here right next to me. I'm definitely trying to reach your hand down. It's hard trying to reach the very bottom. So I definitely see a scenario Mimi may have accidentally just knocked like the parchment that's maybe like glued on the back of it away with something. How great would it be if someone played the jar as the nullifier? I would like to block George's idol with this jar.
Yeah. Adam Klein, take a seat. Tribal Council. Ellen here says, yeah, Simon is hilarious for his idol. You know, it's fake when they crossed it out at the screen next Simon's name during his confessionals. And then also, I saw a comment in here of someone saying, Ron, welcome to the stream, saying Simon's game has gotten worse, flirting about playing an idol for Stevie and Mimi. Now, I want to talk about that. Maybe not the greatest gameplay. He's definitely tunnel visioned at this stage. I think he does need to adapt a little bit and work with those players. So clearly, if your right-hand person does not want to make the move with you, and he has to tell you 8 times during the day and also 3 times at Tribal Council, don't do it, then maybe you shouldn't do it. Maybe you should change direction of what you're doing in the game. And I hope he can do that. But I think that, you know, from a casting perspective, from a producer perspective, they must be fist pumping every night, going back to their rooms, to their huts out there in Samoa, thinking we made the right choice to bring Simon back. Because how boring would this first part of the season have been if we didn't have the Simon versus George sort of matchup happening, and if we didn't have Simon playing the game so aggressively and so hard this time coming back? Like, I have to commend him for at least trying something and doing something. He's not going to go out without a fight. And if George does end up going all the way and winning this season, he could be like, hey, I told you so. We should have taken him out in the beginning. I saw that from the start. He could be the Dante of the season.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely as an audience member, I'm loving what Simon's bringing. You know, I'm sitting there like on the edge of my seat going, oh my gosh, what is Simon going to do? I actually did think it was an idol originally. I didn't actually see like the cross out next to the idol until like a rewatch, but I thought it was an idol, and I was thinking, you know, sometimes, even though it's really bad socially, sometimes you just have to make that move, if you know what I mean. You know, because I definitely think like George, you know, I think he's very subtly telling everyone, oh, can you really trust Simon? You know, he's sort of leading the tribe, you know, and he's sort of making like, there was one comment that really made me laugh, where George's like, oh, I need to fill up my water bottle. And Simon's like, oh, very done for you. And he's like, oh, Simon, you're such a hero. Like he's really trying to build someone up as a massive target, so that everyone's starting to look at him like a target. I think, I mean, I don't know, maybe this is just like, I love like really exciting TV, if it's a bad move or a good move. I think he should have just played it. You know, like everyone knows he's after George anyways. Like all it does, may piss off Shawnee, but at least.
But the problem you have is that, you know, he needed that extra vote, because what if a vote went somewhere else? He needed someone to come with him to be able to ensure that when he takes the shot, he takes him out. So I do think TV-wise, he didn't make the best move, but for him personally, not playing it 100% the right move, not to play it in that scenario. Also, one of the comments coming up here from Ellen is also, Mimi was hilarious trying to find something in the cookie jar and getting busted by Liz. Liz fully reminded me of something from The Walking Dead when she rose up in the back and she was looking at her from behind like a predator stalking her prey, as Mimi has her hand in the cookie jar. It was such a great scene. It took me a couple of minutes before I realized it was Liz who was looking at her with her hand in the cookie jar there as well. But Mimi's been great. I did like Mimi. You know, obviously she went home a little bit early here this season. She wasn't maybe a great player because she's one of those people, I think, that is fiercely independent and don't want to be told what to do. Clearly, that's why she looked through the cookie jar when Jordan said don't do it, or Geordie said don't do it unless you're in danger. And also, she was the one person that was constantly against the flow. Even when they went to do the raid, she was probably more of a hero than a villain because she didn't want George to completely chop down the tree. And maybe she saved George's game by telling him not to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know. I feel like you should. You know, I think
if we ever play Survivor, you're my ride or die till the end, mate. Because if you're doing stuff like that, you're chopping off the opposing tribe's shelter. I don't think they're voting for you at the end to win the game,
mate. I'll bury the machete. You know, I would like hide the flint. You know, just hide everything. You know, like. No, I love Mimi. You know, she was not afraid to speak her mind. I loved just how bold she was as well. Like you could tell that she didn't really care. It's just like, no, I'm my own person. I have my own thoughts. I loved the moment in episode 2 where someone's like, yeah, all of us going to take out George. She's like, no, I'm not on board, and Shawnee's not on board. And you could see someone going, crap, like I think Simon definitely would have been left out of that vote if it wasn't for Mimi.
Yeah. Ellen here said, I would have chopped the shelter too. Isn't that the point of the raid? Now, I would have chopped the shelter if I could have gotten away with it and people didn't know it was me who did it. But I don't want to be the person that do it. But I guess, I mean, it's fun TV. I was shocked that he was willing to do it. I thought, listen, George, you gotta play nice to a certain degree, steal all the food, do all of that. But I think that if you lost your shelter on like day 9, like you've still got energy day 1, day 2 to bolt that thing. It just gets worse and worse the longer you're out there and you're having to rebuild the shelter. I don't think it would have been a great move for them, but great entertainment nonetheless. We've also got Gabe saying it would have been Stevie, but Mimi screwed herself with the cookies. And Mimi really screwed herself at Tribal Council because she, once again at Tribal Council, dug a hole for herself. She basically said she's not a team player and she's like, Mimi's gonna do what Mimi's gonna do. And Shani looked at that and she said, listen, this is not someone I want to work with long term because I can't mend and mold them to do what I want in the game. So if I can't control them, I don't want them in the game. And I mean, for Shani to turn her vote away when she knows Stevie is coming for her, that's some pretty impressive stuff.
Exactly.
You really messed up.
But I think the argument is, did Mimi, screw up for herself, or Stevie just that much of a mastermind? Like you could kind of tell he ran that vote. He's got Simon, he's got Geordie, they're doing their own thing, but he's just sneaking in the background. He's Sneaky Steve. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, look at Simon, what is he doing? No one's like, what's Sneaky Steve doing?
Would you sign up for Sneaky Steve Tai Chi if you could?
Oh, absolutely. I actually did Tai Chi, so it's a really funny story.
Is the Kamehameha really a part of it? Like the fireball thing, is that really Tai Chi?
I didn't necessarily do that, but what happened was that I was down in Wellington attending Toi Whakaari Open Day, which is a massive drama school in New Zealand. And since it was an open day, I didn't realize that they were actually having full-on classes going. But I walk into a room thinking it's part of the tour, but I accidentally joined a full-on class. And since I thought it was part of a tour, I was like, oh, maybe I'm a bit late. So I thought I'd just go and join. But no, it was a full class. And we spent an hour and a half doing Tai Chi.
Yeah.
And it was really fun. It was actually really, really fun. Yes, I definitely signed up to do Tai Chi with Stevie. Yeah. Especially the fireball. It's like the anime move. Yeah.
We've got a great audience here in the live tonight. Quite a few people watching us. And as a big favor to us, if you would consider hitting the like button, it'd be awesome if everybody that is in the live could hit the like button. It does help with the YouTube algorithm and also will make it more available for other people to discover when they're searching for content on Australian Survivor. We really appreciate everybody being here with us. Let's have a look at our current draft picks. Now, one thing I will say, Maki, I didn't have time to do the points because we only had episode 1 and episode 2 confessionals done, and I thought episode 3 confessionals would be done before this live tonight. So I actually need that to finish off the points. So what I might do for those that are interested in seeing the points, I'll do another short form video over the weekend when the confessionals are available on Reddit, and I'll put it up to say who's got what, how many points, because it's not just simply who's got the last player left at the end of this draft. It is about who's had the most confessionals, who's had the least confessionals, because you also get points for that, who's won certain challenges, who's found advantages, etc., etc. It is going to be a lot of fun to see how that's going to play out. But for now, let's have a look at the current state of affairs with our players. We went into this equal. We both had 12 players, but in the very first episode, I lost my first person. And that was actually, can I add a row below? First person out was Jackie. That was followed then by Angeli. So I had two people out immediately in the game, back after back.
My team is superior.
For a few seconds they were, but then Michael followed with Mimi. So we've actually lost same amount of players here in the first week.
Even Steven, Evie Stevie.
And Stevie?
Yeah, Evie Stevie, yeah.
Evie Stevie, I lost you. Oh, Evie Stevie. Oh, right. Even. Yeah. I'm like thinking Stevie. What did Stevie do again? So yeah, this is where we're sitting with the draft at the moment. So very, very equal. How do you feel about your picks? You've seen the first week worth of action. Your top 3 picks for this season was Shawnee, Sneaky Steve, and Rogue. How do you feel about that top three? And who is the player that has encouraged you the most outside of that top three?
Oh, I think, Shawnee, Sneaky Steve, Rogue, definitely the top 3 players of the season so far, in my opinion. no, it's I would say definitely Shawnee is definitely like leading my team at the moment. I don't really need to explain it. I do think one of Shawnee's greatest weaknesses, which I think she's actually turned into a massive strength now, is that she couldn't really bond with the athletes. She really struggled in both Champions Physical Contenders and All Stars to get along with like the Matt, the Lydia, the Abbeys, the Lees. But she's getting along really well with Geordie. She was like Simon, wants to work with her. Michael wanted to work with her. Definitely there's more stronger guys like are wanting to work with her, So I definitely think while she's like a massive target, she's so
Mate,
good
did you forget
socially.
about the fact that she worked with Nick, the biggest alpha Australian survivor has ever seen?
Yeah, oh yeah, exactly, yeah.
No, I get you. I mean, Shawnee's been impressive. Like for me, 100%. I'm thinking of doing a power ranking. Shawnee probably number 1. Spoiler alert on that, because she's had one hell of a week. She, the only thing is, can she be this far out in front and still win the season before someone realizes that she's really running it and that she's getting her way every single episode? I don't know. But at this stage, if you ask me who's winning the season, I would say Shawnee. Crazy enough. And
Absolutely.
she's playing a great game, and she's playing a way more in front out aggressive game than what I've seen her play before. And I think because she is a lot more proactive, because she has a lot more confidence in her own ability as a game player coming in for a third time, we're seeing a much improved Shawnee. And if she continues down this road, she could become one of the greatest, if not the best, we've ever seen play this game. I know it's very high praise very early on in the season, but she deserves it because she's had a really good first week.
Yeah, and I think that's quite similar to the Sandra effect in Game Changers. Both Shawnee and Sandra came in with massive targets on their back, but instead of trying to hide it, they're full on embracing it. And I think that's what you should do in that position. I think if you're George and Haley, like it's good to sort of quieten down because they're more known for being more out in front. Whereas Shawnee and Sandra, before he was, before Game Changer, Sandra was the more kind of in the background player. So definitely it's good to just own it and be like, yeah, I'm Shawnee, I'm Sandra, this is my 3rd time and I'm going to dominate. And so far,
she's doing it.
She's doing it. Yeah.
Who else outside of that top 3 has sort of impressed you in your team? Who do you think we should be looking out for?
I
Is there hope for your team?
Steve.
No, outside of the top 3. Outside of the top 3.
Oh, outside the top 3. I reckon Simon. I think he did have an extremely good premiere. Like the first episode, I feel like was really good, but definitely has been kind of turned against him because Shawnee took in charge. But I don't know. I feel like if he can somehow scrape his way to a swap, maybe find an idol or two, definitely with the players like a Matt, a David, even a Sam, even a Sean, maybe to a certain degree, they may actually want to keep him around. Because I definitely think.
Do you think he was trying to channel his inner Sandra when he threw George's hat into the fire, like Sandra did with Russell's hat?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
He's a fan, so he probably watched the Heroes vs. Villains, I would assume.
Yeah, so something that really shocked me was the clip where he threw George's hat into the fire pit. I thought that was the end of the first episode.
And then it confused me.
And then in the 3rd episode, he's wearing it. I was like, what? Like, I didn't see the outcome of the 3rd episode until then. But I went back.
Did production give him another? Yeah, did production give him another hat? And they're like, hey, here you go.
Yeah, I actually sent it to Australian Survivor memes on Facebook. If you guys aren't following them, I highly recommend. I've got such funny memes about Australian Survivor. But I actually sent that in, just like Simon throwing George's hand to the fire, and then like 2 episodes later, he's just wearing the hat on on top of his head. Yeah.
All right, let's get over to my team real quick before I get into some of the questions. I've got some questions I want to jump into here in the live, but I've got Haley, George, and Nina as my top 3 picks. I feel George is living up to the reputation he has. The cockroach of Bankstown is very difficult to kill. He's still in the game. He may not be running the game right now. He may not be dominating it. But I tell you one thing, if you leave George in this game long enough, he is going to find a way. He is going to build his soldiers, and he is going to take out people. I can very easily see him taking out Shawnee before the end if she doesn't sort of watch out and actually take him out before that, because I don't think he's going to make the same mistake. I don't think he may work with Haley and Shani throughout the season. I don't think he sits next to any of those two in a final tribal council. He would want someone that is less likable than him to be sitting next to him at the finals if he does get there. Now, do remember, to get into the finals in Australian Survivor, you got to win a very difficult endurance challenge at the end. Can George do it? I have not been overly impressed by his challenge abilities as of yet. He may have some broader shoulders coming into this season. I don't physically, he hasn't done that much. Puzzle-wise, he's proven to be flaky at that so far, so he still has to prove himself to be able to get to the end. But the edit is definitely telling us George is going to continue to be a big character this season. I feel like outside of Shani, George at this point is my second pick to win this season. I honestly feel like the edit is showing us constantly he's got a reputation. Simon throwing the hat in there, hey, you may regret that in the future. Those little comments, they don't need to leave it in the show. They're doing it for a reason. So I do think he's going to be there very long term. I'm underwhelmed by Nina so far, not because she's not playing a good game. It's just I don't know what she's doing, and the editors are not showing us. Frustrated by that. Haley remains queen. She's doing a really good job at minimizing her threat level at this stage. So hats off to her, because she's coming in a very difficult spot this season. When we look at the people that are not in my top group here, the people that have impressed me are definitely going to be Geordie and Liz at this stage. I think Liz is playing a really good game, and I think she's learning from a master in Shani. Can she utilize that down the line and maybe win this game? I don't know. I feel like if she does go to the end, she'll always be the right-hand person of Shani, but I think she's going deep. She's got the physicality. She seems to have a great social game as well, so not feared for her at all. Geordie is playing really, really good. He's doing better than what I thought. He's really downplaying that chaos Joker side of him. In fact, he doesn't even call himself the Joker at all, unless JLP calls him the Joker, so he's very tame at the moment. And I find it really funny that we have Liz, who's the Harlequin. She had that Harlequin smile when they did her scene, and we've got Joker both in the same tribe. So who knows? Maybe that's some good juju and they go far in this game. Outside of that, for the Heroes tribe, it's slim pickings at this moment. Like, there's no one that stands out to me as someone that we need to be looking at that's going to go to the end of this game. I want to go back to a few of the questions here. We had Sam Wells asking, rank the 4 eliminated contestants and how much you'd like to see them return, please. So if you could rank those players, who would you rank from bottom to top, or top to bottom? Go top to bottom. Who would you most like to see return, and who not, maybe?
It's really hard, because I do want to see all of them return. For number one, I'll definitely put Jackie, because we haven't really talked about it. How much would it suck, like she didn't go really far the first time she played. She
deserves it, yeah.
Play. And then she gets medically evacuated literally 24 hours, and probably not even 24 hours into the show. That's so rough. I felt so bad for Jackie. Like, she got no screen time. One of the very few returning players who did come back, and she's out so early. Like, that is so rough. And I really hope that she can come back. I probably don't see her coming back, because I'm not sure what season would fit Jackie coming back. But yeah, I'd definitely love to see Jackie come back. I think Michael is someone I'd love to see come back and play again as well.
Yeah,
I feel like he may really suit a second chance type season.
I agree. I agree. I'd like to see both Jackie. Well, I guess Jackie can't fit into that second chance type theme. Maybe there's something where they bring back injured players if they can ever get Ross back on their good books. So I don't think they're in talking terms with each other.
Survivor Philippines.
Yeah.
Jenna, Ross, and Jackie. Easy.
Yeah. I'm there for that, but I'd like to see Jackie get another shot. That's a given. I really liked Angeli as well. I thought she brought a lot of spice, but I don't know if she would even be interested in this experience again. But I do feel like it's a big character we maybe missed. But from a game standpoint, I think Michael comes back and he's a lot better for this experience if he does come back. So that would be good. Maybe it was exciting as well. What great casting! Let's just take our hats off to the casting department, because I think all 4 of these players were pretty good. So I wouldn't mind seeing any of them come back. I want to read the next one here. Ellen says, my draft team for the guys for entertainment and reality realness is George, Geordie, Shani, and David. And so far, I'm happy with them. I think it's a pretty solid team, especially from the perspective that George and Geordie is doing pretty well. Shani, we've had a little bit of content from her, being from LA, being glad not to be in LA and be out on the island. And then David, we've heard nothing from, but I think George and Geordie definitely 2 solid picks there. Do you approve of that team, Mucky?
I definitely approve of that because 2 of them are in my team. You know, I'm not biased, but I definitely will be biased. I mean,
Louis also asks, who benefits the most from a swap? That's if they do a swap. But who benefits from the swap? I think at this stage, the villains probably because they're being decimated.
I think Haley. I think she desperately needs a swap. You know, I think if Rogue goes, she's the next one on the block. I actually feel like it's going to be between Haley and Rogue. So I think Haley desperately needs to.
She needs to get in a tribe with with George. She needs to get in a tribe with George.
Exactly. Yeah,
she needs that other big threat, and then also someone she can work with.
Yeah, even then, I feel like Liz could actually really benefit from a swap as well, because if she's separated with Shawnee, or if Shawnee does get swap screwed, which hopefully that doesn't happen, I feel like Liz may be seen less of a threat, because I do think if you're looking from especially from an audience perspective, Shawnee and Liz are together, you know, and in both times Shawnee's partner has been taken out a lot earlier than Shawnee, you know, Finale Final 6, Shawnee Final 4, like Nick and Harry, you know, Final 13, Final 11, and she was Final 7, you know. So I definitely think if Liz was to break away from that trend, she might actually go really, really far.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. We've also got Gabe asking, do you think that production will ever let Palau happen, letting a tribe get decimated? I don't know if Australian Survivor has got the nerve to do that, but personally, when you look at a season like Heroes versus Villains, I want to see it, because I don't want to see George go to the Heroes and suddenly become a hero. You know, like, he's a villain, he should stay a villain, you know. So I kind of think with a theme like Villains versus Heroes, you want to kind of keep them separate throughout the season. But if they end up losing another challenge or two, I don't think production is going to let it happen. I think they'll probably make some changes in this format of the show. Jenny also says here, I hope the Heroes lose immunity next week so we can see more from them and their tribe dynamics. I agree. Like, I just don't know what's going on there. Like, it's a mystery at this point. You know, it's like I really need to see them lose, and I think they will throw a challenge. Now, if they do take out Haley when they throw that challenge, that's risky business. She might even find an idol because she now has somewhat of an idea where to look. So that could be exciting. Maybe she plays an idol and saves herself.
Yeah.
Marcus asks, if you're Sean Hampson, how would you change your game so that you're not a merge boot again if he makes the merge? Does he try and do what Mark did in Blood vs. Water and have shields in front of him? Very good point. Now, I think the problem with Sean is that can he really have shields in front of him? Like, he's by far the tallest guy. He's dominating in the challenges, and he's one of those players that are coming back and playing exactly the same way he did the first time. I haven't seen the strategy side yet, but he's going to have to surround himself with I think it's the reason he's got those boys around him. He's going to try and surround himself with some loyal, trustworthy dudes that he can take into the merge and hopefully run this game with. But I just don't think that strategy is going to work when you've got players like Nina, you've got players like Haley, and Flick and those girls who've played the game before. You know, Paige, she seems to be a very strong woman as well. She seems to be getting along with the woman. I don't think they're letting this happen, and they're not being very subtle about it. Clearly, the edit is showing us that everybody knows that they as a group, they're working together.
Yeah. No, I think that Simon's only saving grace. I think if he's on a tribe and Sean's there and all the other 3 boys are there, so they're going to want to take Simon with them into merge just because, just more be part of the meat pack, you know?
Yeah, the meat shield alliance, like Gabe said here, Sean has to do the Jeremy Collins strategy. It's the only way for a player like him to win. And yeah, I mean, he's just so physically dominating as well. Tom also says, listen, Shawnee to make the final 4. Whoever makes it to the top 3 between them wins this season. I think that's a good shout at this stage. There's a lot of games still left to be played, but the problem with Australian Survivor, the way that the edit works is they normally tell you who you need to be looking for. Like they'll tell you, these are the 5 players that matter, you know, and then the rest of them will get smaller edits. And I feel like currently, if you're looking at it that way, it's already telling a story, I think, of who potentially could win this season. And I just can't believe that some of those players are in the running at this stage, because I thought people would be smart enough to take them out early on in this game.
Yeah, I think it's also a thing as well where all the juices come from the villains as well. I think
100%.
I think you're the producers. You're like, yeah, we could show much of the heroes, but it's just the same stuff over and over again. Kind of like what I mentioned earlier. There hasn't been any Frankenbites yet. There hasn't been, I'm the Joker, I'm the king, like it hasn't been that over and over again. Like you still hear it here and there, but I feel like like they've definitely changed the editing this season. Like it's still like your big place game confessionals.
Hopefully enough of us that talk about the show, the criticism has reached their ears and they're like, okay, we'll try and change it up a little bit. I'm still seeing a lot of people very frustrated when I look at the fan pages about all these returnee players, and some people are like, I don't want to hate the same player again that I hated before. Like, give me a new player. So I don't know why they hate some players, but that's the comments that you see on the Facebook pages and things like that. So I do hope that the next season they do is an all newbie season instead of this mixed season or bringing players back. Let's build some new legends. Let's make sure that we get a full all-star season 3 or 4 seasons from now. It's kind of what I'm hoping for. That's on my bucket list, on my wish list for future seasons, as in any case. But Mucky, I think that's it. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up? Anything that you think we missed out on talking about?
Just a couple things actually. The first one being, just about your recent comment. Like, I do kind of agree about returning players, but I think if we were to take all the returning players out of the season, right? I think it's not a very good season. I think like people like Liz, like Mimi, Michael, definitely great castaways. Angeli as well, Rogue, she's like, I don't agree with stuff she's saying, but she's definitely, quite entertaining, from a TV perspective. But I think the returning players here are bringing that strategy. They're bringing that drama, that sort of intensity that I think that's what Australian Survivor needs to go up against Married at First Sight. To have a lot of that drama, like the big rivalry between Simon and George. I feel like Australian TV does really need that, if that kind of makes sense.
I disagree. I think that there's a lot of comments out there specifically about George that I'm seeing, like he's loved and hated. Like some people like he's very polarizing, but there's a lot of people, those comments about we don't want to see the same player out there that we didn't like the first time. Some of it's directed his way. I'm a fan. I like seeing him. I'm happy to have him. But I think, if you look at the challenge, Australia is what people were sick of seeing same people come over and do that. I think there is, you can only do this. You can't be the same one trick pony every single season. You say that newbies can't bring the heat. Well, a lot of people loved Brains versus Brawn. That was a full newbie season. There's a lot of great newbie seasons where you just need to cast better. Don't cast Instagram models. Don't cast people who don't know the game. Get true fans on the show. Give everybody a balanced edit. There's no excuse. They've got a bigger budget than Survivor South Africa. They should be doing a better job than Survivor South Africa when it comes to casting and editing and creating a compelling show. So I don't agree. I've heard that excuse for a couple of seasons now where people saying, well, we need to have this for maths and whatever, but just create a good show. That's my opinion. That's my take. I get it. Some people like the returnee season. I don't like the mixed seasons myself. So Gabe says, I like pure newbies or pure new returnee seasons. Mix the season statistics, how newbies are screwed, and returning players run each season become predictable. Exactly. That's my point. We've seen it every single time. We know that the returnees are going to run over the newbies this season, but I'm going to have some fun with it. I'm still going to enjoy the season, but my wish list is let's get people like Maki on the show. Let's get people like, Kahuna on the show. Let's get some fans on the show for this next one. That's what I want to see. More mats. That's what I want, from this season.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. What else would you want to bring up? What is there other things you wanted to talk about?
This last thing, right, is that this is something that I actually thought of earlier. I feel like a lot of people were quite down on the season in the preseason because of it's not even newbies and returnees. Like it's quite bad doing heroes versus villains. But I'm really loving it so far, and I think it's that effect on kind of like how I talked about the mince pie. You go into a dairy to get a pie. You have a feeling it's going to be quite bad, but when you have it, it's actually like really good because it heavily exceeds your expectations. Actually, this season could be a top tier Australian Survivor season, I reckon.
The jury's still out for me. Like, I'm enjoying it so far. I think it's fun and it's entertaining. But if Simon gets taken out next, the season loses a lot of its appeal to me because the whole will he get George or won't he get George, I think hits differently than the Stevie versus Shawnee debate. Like, it's not the same level. I feel like it's there's an outside punter's chance that Simon could pull it off. But I don't think
Yeah.
Stevie has any shot, I'm sorry to say, to beat Shani and take her out to become the master. She's not going to allow for that to happen. So I think if that goes away, then a lot of the drama goes away. But it's a long season still. I'm not going to say it could be one of the better. Like I'm an open book. I'm an open mind about this. I want the season to be great. At this stage, it's still going very predictable because all the newbies are going. I kind of feel like we're watching the prelims before the playoffs when all the veterans get to the merge, and then we're going to see the real gameplay take off because we're going to have all these players at a different caliber going up against each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tom here says half Survivor nerds, half random recruits. I want some easy players to beat when I play. I agree with you. And in fact, those are the best seasons. I should also say you don't want a season full of super nerds, Survivor nerds, 24 of them out there because they'll all be game body. You definitely do want some random good characters. But what I'm trying to say is don't look at someone and say, oh, they've got 50,000 Instagram followers. That's awesome. We might get them to tune in and watch the show if they're on there, instead of actually looking for good personalities. That's really what I want. I want good personalities to go on the show. Now, if they have the following, that's just a great bonus, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Kahuna says he can sit on a beach for 40 days. He's in.
Sweet.
Marcus also comes down to Channel 10, needs to trust the cast as they are the ones who dictate the production if they want newbies or returnees to see, especially up against maths. Agreed with you on that. Nothing will ever beat maths, but basically trust the cast and not have too much production interference like we have seen in the past seasons. I agree. Fully agree with that. I think it's all great points. Ellen says, I just hope the villains win some immunity challenges so we can see the heroes at Tribal Council. It's getting very boring to watch the villains go there all the time. Yeah, all the juice has been in the villains tribe. It's been exciting to see, but I do want to see the heroes sweat a little bit. You know, I want to see them under pressure, and I want to see what's going on in that tribe. Just sit though, nothing else. We'll have another Sandra. We'll employ the Sandra strategy and be on the sit-out bench when the challenges come up.
Yeah.
All right, Marky, anything else from your end? Anything else you wanted to bring up?
I mean, I can talk for hours, so we should probably put it.
All right, we'll wrap it up. I think we've spoken about everything. For everybody that's been in the live, you guys have been awesome, and girls, you've been awesome as well. Doing all those comments, I always love having some people there that we can bounce off. Please consider to subscribe. I'm sure everybody in the live has already subscribed to the channel, but for those that are checking this out at a later stage, consider subscribing to the channel, hitting a like, hitting the notification bell so you'll know when I go live. I'm doing extra content this season. I'm also doing some top 5 takes or top 6 takes, depending on each episode and what I want to talk about afterwards. Potentially, I may even do a bit of a power ranking at some stage as well. So I'm mixing some shorter format with the longer format and bringing you more content as we're covering this season. But so far, it's been an awesome week of Survivor. I'm looking forward to see if Hayley can dodge the bullet, if she can become the most successful Australian Survivor winner of all time by coming back and surviving that first vote. And we'll be back next week to talk about all of this. So be sure to check out the channel. Thanks for all the support. I love you guys. You guys are awesome. You're the reason that we do this every single week. And we'll catch you guys next time. Bye.